Welcome to Workshop 3, Meetings That Work. This is our Executive Director and Chair Partnership for Strategic Governance workshop. It's a self-paced workshop, which means you'll watch video segments, then pause to do individual work. You'll need your workbook, and make sure that you download that. It is in the YouTube description below. Let's get started. But before we dive in, I want you to think about this question. What fills most of your board meeting time? I want you to pause the video now and write down your answer. Take about 30 seconds. What actually happens in your board meetings? All right, keep your answer in mind as we go. But first, let me tell you a little bit about who we are. Just in case you don't already know, Brushy Fork Leadership Institute is based at Berea College in Berea, Kentucky, in the heart of Central Appalachia. We focus on grassroots leadership development and organizational capacity building, helping small nonprofits and community organizations build sustainable systems and lead well. Now, before we dive in, a quick note about how this workshop works. You're here to learn how to structure board meetings for strategic governance. Throughout this workshop, you'll see pause points where you'll stop the video and do individual reflection or planning work. Don't skip these. The learning happens when you apply ideas to your actual organization. You'll notice how we're structuring this content. Short teaching segments followed by work time. Pay attention to what keeps you engaged and steal what works. Use it in your next board meeting even, or a staff retreat. Sound good? Let's go. So, quick note about who this workshop is for. This workshop is designed for executive directors and board chairs. The ideal scenario, you and your board chair are watching this together, learning and co-designing. The realistic scenario is that most of you are executive directors, and that's expected. You're often the ones seeking professional development and bringing resources back to your boards. Both are fine. If you're the executive director, think of today as building a toolkit to bring to your board chair. You're not redesigning meetings alone. You're equipping your chair with frameworks, tools, and content that makes their job easier. And if you're a board chair, you're learning how to structure meetings that get the most out of your board's strategic thinking. The executive director supports you in that work. If you're both here together, perfect. You'll co-design as we go. And so here's our main principle that is going to be hopefully respected throughout this entire workshop and the work that you do together. The chair leads and the executive director supports in this scenario. Both partner to make strategic meetings possible and keep that frame in mind throughout this workshop. All right, let's name the tension we're solving today. Here's what we hear over and over from nonprofit leaders. Board meetings feel like a performance where I report and they listen. We need their strategic input, but the meeting doesn't create space for it. I'm doing all of the thinking and they're just approving things. And my favorite, nobody prepares. Let's name what's really happening. Board meetings are structured around reporting instead of governance work. And here's the thing, it's not anyone's fault. Meeting structures get passed down, chair to chair, executive director to executive director, without anyone stepping back to ask, is this the best use of our governance time? So let's be clear about what the problem actually is. The problem is not bad agendas and boring meetings, too many reports, bad board members, or disengaged boards. The problem is how board time is structured. Meeting structure shapes what boards focus on. If you want your board to think strategically, you have to structure meeting time for strategic thinking. Right now, most board meetings are structured for reporting, and so most boards sit and listen. Before we go any further, we need to be crystal clear about roles because this matters for how you'll use what we built today. According to BoardSource and Nonprofit Government's best practices, board meetings belong to the board. It is governance work. The board chair leads the board meetings. They set the agenda, they facilitate. The executive director supports board meetings. You provide content, reports, and recommendations. Let me say this clearly. This workshop is not about executive directors taking over board meetings. That would be a major governance problem. This workshop is about how executive directors and chairs can work together so meetings focus on governance work, direction, stewardship, sustainability, not just sitting through reports. Now, that we've got that out of the way, let's break down into specifics. Who does what? The board chair's responsibilities are to set the agenda, often with the input from the executive director, but the chair owns it. The chair runs the meeting, facilitates discussions, manages time, leads board engagement, and oversees governance work. The executive director provides organizational information. You prepare reports and dashboards, frame decisions clearly with options and recommendations, bring strategic questions forward, and you send pre-reading materials for your board chair to share. The biggest thing that you're doing here is you're supporting the chair in leading an effective meeting. And together, you decide what the board needs to discuss. Planning major decisions, identify strategic issues, make sure the board time is used for governance work, not just an information transfer. Here's the key principle to remember. The chair manages the meeting. The executive director manages the information and presents decisions. Strategic meetings happen when those two work together, and that is a strategic partnership. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, I get it. The chair leads the meeting, but how much influence do I actually have? Here's the truth. You have an enormous influence through what you prepare and how you present it. The executive director doesn't control the meeting structure, but you do control what information the board receives, whether or not the reports are clear and scannable or dense and overwhelming, whether decisions are framed with clear options and context, or if they're vague and confusing, whether strategic questions are brought forward with background information and research, or if you're just asking the board to think about something without any framing, and whether or not the materials arrive a week in advance so board members can prepare, or if they just show up the morning of the meeting. And also, whether your chair has everything they need to facilitate well, or whether they're just having to wing it. This is significant influence. The chair can't facilitate a strategic meeting without good content. You make strategic meetings possible by managing informations and decisions well. Let's get really clear on what board meetings are actually for. Board meetings are for direction, stewardship, major decisions, strategic thinking, sustainability, accountability, and leadership development. They are not for reading reports out loud, staff updates on basic operations, or information that could have been an email. If the board meeting is mostly reporting, the board is not getting the chance to govern. Governance requires discussion, decisions, and strategic thinking. That's what they're here for, so let them. Here's another way to think about board meetings. Board meetings should include 3 types of work. Information, what the board needs to know, updates, dashboards, and metrics. Decisions, what the board needs to decide, budget approval, policy changes, major contracts, stuff like that. And strategic discussion, what the board needs to think about together, mission scope, risk assessment, and sustainability. Now, here's the problem. Most boards spend the bulk of their meeting time on number 1 and almost no time on number 2 and 3. The fix? Move number 1 to pre-reading. Send it ahead so board members arrive informed and ready to discuss. Now, I know what you're thinking. People didn't do the homework in school. They definitely won't read board materials. And here's why this is different. You've already been sending updates between meetings. Remember our communication workshop? Your board is learning to receive information outside of meetings. Pre-reading is that same principle applied to meeting preparation. The key is making it easy to consume, short, scannable, clear sections, and sent with enough time to actually read it. I like to do 5 to 7 days ahead of time. Pre-reading transforms what's possible in meetings. Without it, you're asking board members to hear information and decide in the same moment. With it, they arrive ready to govern. Use meeting time for what only a group can do. Decide together and think strategically together. Just a quick little connection between our last workshop and this one. Remember when we talked about the 3 domains of governance, management, shared leadership? We've got these here. And then we talked about communication types, decision, awareness, engagement. That's what shows up in board meetings too. Governance work happens in decision items and strategic conversations. Management work gets shared in pre-reading. Shared leadership happens in strategic conversations. And I want you to keep those connections in mind as we go. All right. This is a lot. Feel free to pause it. But here's the structure that we're working to build towards today. Before we dive into the framework, make sure you have your workbook open. You'll need it for the tools we're building. If you haven't downloaded it yet, go grab it. You'll find it in the link in the YouTube description below. You can click on the link and select Use as Template to copy the workbook to your Google Drive, or if you need to download it and use Word on your computer, use that link too. Here's the 5-section strategic board meeting agenda. If you're a board chair, this is what we recommend for powerful strategic meetings. This framework helps you lead meetings that focus on governance work, not just listening to reports. If you're an executive director, this is the framework you can bring to your chair as a proposal. You'll prepare the materials that make each section work, the content, the dashboards, the decision memos, the strategic questions. Even if your chair doesn't immediately adopt the full framework, you can prepare materials in this format. It becomes the handoff packet that makes their job easier. In your workbook, you'll find this framework with 2 versions, one for board chairs showing how to lead each section, and one for executive directors showing what to prepare for each section. You use whichever fits your situation, or use both as a conversation tool with your chair. Here's the structure. Mission moment, or purposeful pause, about 5 minutes. It's the goal here to connect to your purpose. Dashboard and key updates, 10 minutes, essential information only. Decision items, 15 minutes. Clear choice points where the board votes or approves. Strategic conversation, 20 minutes. Board thinking together on a real organizational challenge or opportunity. And sustainability focus, about 10 minutes, where you're focusing on the organizational health and future capacity. Now you'll notice that this is a total time of 60 minutes, and many board meetings go a lot longer than 60 minutes, so just adapt this to your time. I want you to notice that this framework connects directly to everything that you've already learned. The mission moment is governance work using engagement communication. Dashboard is management information transitioning to governance oversight using awareness communication. Decision items are governance work using decision communication. See the drift? Whether your chair adopts this framework immediately or you introduce sections gradually, you're building the materials to support strategic meetings. Let's walk through each section so you understand what goes where and why. Let's start with mission moment. The purpose is to connect the board to the why before diving into business. What it is? It's a story from a client or participant, a data point that shows impact, a board member sharing why they joined the board, or a brief reflection on the mission and action. What it's not is a long program report, operational updates, or a fundraising pitch. The chair leads this, and the chair invites the story or reflection. The executive director can support this by providing the story. Maybe you share it yourself, or maybe you also invite a board member to share. And why it matters is that this is the start of the meeting, and it grounds you in purpose, not paperwork. It reminds the board why governance work matters, and it connects them emotionally to the mission before you ask them to think strategically. 5 minutes, that's it. Don't overdo it. Just ground everyone in the why before moving to the what and how. Next up is dashboard and key updates. The purpose is for the board to receive essential information quickly. What it is a high-level metric overview, program reach, financials, key developments. Here's the thing. This is sent in the pre-reading packet about a week ahead of the meeting. The board members should have read it before they showed up. At the meeting, the chair briefly reviews highlights and reminds them, you've seen the dashboard. Any questions before we move to decisions? It is not going to be a line-by-line report read aloud or an operational detail. Staff updates on day-to-day work. This is something that the chair is leading in this section. They're reviewing the dashboards briefly and asks for questions. The executive director supports by sending the pre-reading packet about a week ahead of time, the dashboard with a brief analysis and context. And why this matters. If it doesn't need discussion, it doesn't need a lot of meeting time. Pre-reading moves information transfer out of meetings so the board time is focused for governance, decisions, and strategic thinking. This is one of the biggest shifts that I'm asking you to make. Stop reading reports aloud at meetings. Send them ahead of time. And use that meeting time for discussion. Next up, decision items. We're giving the board the opportunity to exercise their governance authority on clear choices. We're looking and thinking about budget approval, policy change, major expenditures, strategic shifts, anything that requires a board vote or approval. The format we're looking for is a decision memo that's been prepared with context, options, recommendations, and a timeline. That's sent in that pre-reading packet. At the meeting, the chair facilitates discussion and calls the vote. It is not decisions sprung on the board at the meeting with no preparation, open-ended "what should we do?" questions without any framing, operational decisions that the staff should be making. Again, the chair leads, they facilitate the discussion, they answer questions, and they call the vote. The executive director supports, again, by preparing a decision memo. Clear options, context, your recommendation. This is decision communication from our communication workshop, and it's happening in real time in the meeting. Next, strategic conversations. This is the most important section, and it's the one most boards that I've worked with tend to skip over. The purpose here is to get the boards thinking on real organizational challenges and opportunities. We're talking about frame strategic questions that the board discusses together. This is not a decision, not yet. It's thinking, exploring, considering different angles. It could be about mission scope, risk assessment, values clarifications, or sustainability planning. The format is the framed question with context, providing the background research, data, and again, any extra information that they might need. At the meeting, the chair is facilitating the discussion. One good structure is individual reflection for about 2 minutes, then pairs, and then discussing as a whole. The thinking needs to get captured, notes, themes, perspective, but you're not forcing a consensus at this point. You're gathering the board's strategic thinking. Again, it's not operational problem solving. That's not the board's job, that's staff. Or vague, "what do you think?" with no framing. We know that that doesn't really work. Or staff asking the board to do their thinking for them. You're bringing a real question with context and asking for their strategic input. Again, chair leads and facilitates the strategic discussion. This is engagement communication from our workshop again, happening in the meeting. This is a section that most boards don't have, and it's where boards learn to think strategically. This is where shared leadership happens. You and the board thinking together about real challenges. Without this section, boards never learn how to be strategic partners. They listen and approve. This is the game changer. And last but not least, sustainability focus. A brief discussion on organizational health, succession planning, financial reserves, board development, risk management. Rotate the topics one per meeting. We found that works really well. If you try to address everything at the same time, you're not going to get anywhere. But one topic per meeting works great. Again, chair is leading and the executive director provides indicators in any context. If sustainability only gets discussed during a crisis, it is far too late. This builds the habit of forward-thinking governance. Let's pop back to that strategic question. Thinking about strategic conversations, because this is where most executive directors we find are struggling. You know you want strategic input from your board, but you don't know how to ask the question. Let me show you the difference between a bad strategic question and a good one. A bad one might be, what should our priorities be? And well, why is this bad? It's too broad. There's no context, no real tension or choice. The board doesn't know what you're asking. They'll either say nothing, or they'll say vague things like, serve more people, or we need to raise more money. Not really helpful. A good strategic question could be, we can serve 100 families deeply or expand to 3 new counties with a lighter touch. Given our mission of lasting impact and our capacity constraints, what factors should guide this decision? Why is this one good? There's a real tension. Deep versus broad, it connects to mission and values of lasting impact. It acknowledges constraints. We can't do both right now. And it asks for thinking, not just opinions. The anatomy of a good strategic question is that there's context, why this matters now. There's a real choice or tension. It's not hypothetical. There's a connection to mission and values, an invitation to thinking, not just gut reactions. That's what makes strategic questions work. They frame the tension clearly and they invite the board member into your thinking process. I want you to take a few moments and think about your own organization. In a moment, you're going to pause the video. You'll take 3 to 4 minutes to work through this on your own. Turn to the strategic question planning worksheet in your workbook, or just grab a piece of paper. Here's what you think about. What topic do you want your board's strategic thinking on? It could be mission scope. Do we go deep or broad? Do we serve new populations? Maybe it's a service expansion. Should we add more programs, expand geographically? Sustainability focused, financial reserves, succession planning, and organizational capacity. Maybe you really need to think about risk assessment. What could go wrong? What opportunities might we miss? Or values clarification. What's going to be guiding our tough decisions coming up? Looking at capacity decisions. Do we grow staff or do we stay lean? What infrastructure do we need? I want you to pick one topic, the one that's the most on your mind right now. Then jot down some thinking. Why does this matter now? What's the context? What's the tension or the choice? Not hypothetical. What's the real decision that you're wrestling with? How does it connect to your mission or your values? What are you actually asking your board to think about? Don't worry about perfect wording yet. Just get your thinking started. I want you to pause now and take 3 to 4 minutes. Now, let's refine that strategic question that you just drafted. You're going to pause the video again in a moment, and it's going to be about another 2 to 3 minutes. I want you to look at what you just wrote. Now ask yourself these refining questions. What's the real choice here? Can I name it more clearly? What would make the tension clearer for my board? How does this connect back to our mission? Can I name that connection explicitly? Is there context that I need to add so the board understands why this matters now? Try rewriting your strategic question with those refinements. Pause now, take 2 to 3 minutes. Hopefully, with refinement, you can see that it's getting better. Strategic questions get clearer when you work on them. That's why executive director and chair conversations about what to bring to the board matters so much. You're not just throwing topics out there. You're framing questions that invite in some real thinking. Let's talk about the pre-reading packet, one of the most important tools for strategic meetings. What goes into it? A dashboard, financial summary, decision memos, strategic questions with context, committee reports, anything that's FYI or background. The format we're looking for is 3 to 5 pages max. We want to send it 5 to 7 days before the meeting. Clear sections, scannable, sent to your chair first, and better yet, co-created with them. Your workbook has a template and a sample cover email. Your workbook also has a current meeting audit tool. Use it after today to map where your meeting time actually goes. It helps to make the patterns visible. This matters because when you send a comprehensive background ahead of time, your chair can facilitate an actual discussion instead of sifting through reports. Another thing that I would like to note, whenever you've got these clear sections with headers and it's scannable and repeatable, we want to make sure that we're using the same format every time so that it's easy for people to find the information that they're looking for. Time to prepare materials for your next board meeting. Turn to the Strategic Board Meeting Framework Executive Director Support Guide in your workbook. Here's what's important to understand. You are not redesigning your board agenda alone. Your chair owns that agenda. What you're doing is preparing the materials that support the 5-section framework. This is what you'll bring to your chair, or what you'll use to support them in leading the meeting. Even if your chair, again, doesn't immediately adopt the full 5-section structure, the materials you're preparing today make their job easier. A clear decision memo, a well-framed strategic question, a scannable pre-reading packet. These are tools that support good meetings regardless of format. So, think about your next board meeting. What do you need to prepare? You're going to have about 10 to 12 minutes of work time. Here's your process. Step 1, pre-reading packet. What information needs to be sent ahead? Dashboard, metrics, financial summary, committee reports, background for decisions. List what goes in your pre-reading packet. It might be different than someone else's. A decision item. What's one clear decision your board needs to make at the next meeting? Frame it. What's the question? What are the options? What's your recommendation? You're preparing this for your board chair to facilitate the decision. A strategic conversation. What topic needs your board's strategic thinking? Draft the question. Use the format you practiced earlier. Give context. Why does this matter now? A real tension or choice, a connection to the mission, and an invitation for deep thinking. This is a question that you'll bring to your chair and say something like, I think the board should discuss this. Here's how I'd frame it. What do you think? As you work, keep in mind, you're preparing materials your chair will be able to use to lead the meeting. This is support work. It's partnership work. If your chair fully embraces the framework, great. If they want to pilot one section, also great. If they're not ready yet, you've still prepared excellent materials that make governance easier. So I want you to pause now, take 10 to 12 minutes to work through all 3 steps. All right, if you took the time to do that, you have prepared your pre-reading packet list, a decision memo, and a strategic question. Now, think about this. What's the first conversation you need to have with your chair about these materials? Again, you're going to pause for a few minutes, and I want you to think about how you're going to approach this conversation. Is it, I'd like to try sending a pre-reading packet before our next meeting? Or can we add 15 minutes for a strategic discussion on this topic? Maybe it's, I prepared a decision memo for this decision. Does this format work for you? Or I learned a framework for strategic meetings. Can we talk about it? Write down your opening line. What will you actually say to your chair? Pause now. Take 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, good. You've got something concrete to bring. That's the partnership conversation, not our meetings are bad, not the board isn't strategic enough. Just, I prepared some materials that might make our jobs easier. Can we talk? That's how change starts. Let's land what you built today. You learned a 5-section framework that connects directly to governance work, clarifying the executive director-chair partnership, who leads and who supports. You practiced framing strategic questions on your own, and you prepared materials for your next meeting, what goes in your pre-reading packet, a decision memo for an upcoming decision, and a strategic question for board discussion. In your workbook, you have tools to help you support your chair in leading strategic meetings. Your decision memo template, strategic question worksheet, a pre-reading packet template, facilitation guide, before and after meeting agendas, and a current meeting audit for later use. All the tools are there. Use them. This isn't just about better meetings. When boards discuss strategy, make informed decisions, and think about sustainability together, they're building organizational capacity. Before you recruit new board members, you need to be able to describe what board service actually looks like. When you have strategic meetings, you can honestly say to a potential board member, we meet quarterly for 90 minutes. You'll receive a pre-meeting material 1 week ahead of time, covering financials, program updates, and any background information for decisions. Meeting time is spent on decisions and strategic discussion and organizational sustainability, not sitting through reports. We need your thinking on mission scope, risk assessment, and sustainability. You'll be a part of governance work, not just listening to updates. Will you please join us? You can't recruit effectively if you can't describe what board work looks like. Strategic meetings make recruitment conversations honest and easy. And that's what Workshop 4 is all about, recruiting and sustaining the right people to do governance work. Thank you for your work today. Your boards and your board chairs are lucky to have you. See you in your Workshop 4.